Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Marcia Rast, and I'm a member here at Advent. I was diagnosed in February of 2014 with stage 2 colon cancer. And in March of 14, I underwent a colon resection to remove the tumor and part of my colon. Then, because of some complications and another medical condition, I ended up at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And shortly before leaving home, I learned that there'd been a mistake made and I had stage 3 colon cancer, not stage 2. And like golf, a higher number is not a good thing when it comes to staging cancer. Then within 24 hours of my arrival at Mayo Clinic, I learned that actually I had stage 4 cancer. There was a tumor on my liver, so it had spread. And as you might imagine, that was pretty devastating. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. It's not a very ladylike term, but I'm here to tell you that's how it felt. I was mostly in shock. I just struggled to make it through the daily activities of living. June and July just kind of passed in a haze. I was numb. Now, my brain remembered a time when I myself said, I know that His grace is sufficient. My head remembered, but my spirit that had connected me with God was silent. Yes, I had experienced His grace in the past, but not in the midst of a life-threatening illness. I cried out to Him and uttered the prayer, Lord, if I have to go through this, I must know You're with me. You cannot be silent. I can't do this without You. Lord, show me how to walk with You and show me how that looks now in the midst of all of this. About that time, I got a wonderful care package from all of you wonderful people at Advent. And in there was a book from my friend Marjorie Vincent. And she, if you don't know her, she's a member here at Advent. And that book had helped her and a couple of her friends through cancer. That book spoke to my silent spirit. It helped me to find God in the midst of the dark cloud we were living in. In chapter after chapter, cancer survivors told me to look for God's tender love and mercies daily, especially in the unexpected places. Soon the blessings were so numerous I had to write them down or I wouldn't have remembered them. So I began a list of blessings, and that book was the first thing on the list. From the time I arrived at Mayo and learned that my cancer had spread to the liver, I tried to find a support group. I was amazed that there were no support groups for me anyway. There were some for breast cancer, but none existed in Rochester or at the Mayo Clinic. And believe me, I searched. I yearned for the support of other women in the midst of the same struggle that I was in, and especially Christian women. About that same time, we were visiting a church, the Autumn Ridge Church, and there I met a woman named Susan who had suffered with a serious illness and was still in rehab. She shared her faith story, and I wept all the way through it. I knew God put her there for me that day. She was my Esther. As I got to know her, I told her about the book, my list of blessings, and about my yearning for a cancer support group. And weeks later, she phoned me. She had heard on the Christian radio there that another church, the Christ Community Church, was beginning a Bible study support group for women with cancer. And she phoned and gave me the website address. I went to the website, and they had all kinds of Bible studies going on. And as I began to read the details, when I found the one for women with cancer, the title of the book was When God and Cancer Meet. And that was my book that Marjorie had sent me from here at Advent, the one that helped me so much. Well, my mouth dropped open. I felt like I had a direct message from God. I would have been afraid not to sign up because I knew that He did that class for me. He set the whole thing up just for me. I was hungry for the kind of love and support that these ladies gave so freely, and I wasn't disappointed in what my needs were, how my needs were met. The blessings were tremendous, and my thirsty soul was watered and fed just as I'd yearned for, and God was no longer silent. My list continued to grow. I saw Him everywhere. It was amazing how He met my needs, often before I even knew I had the need. It was especially amazing when He took care of some of the small, and a lot of the small and unimportant seeming things. Things like someone to help me with my chemo-damaged dry skin. And you know, guys, that's really important to women. We hate looking awful. And then He sent someone that taught me how to draw eyebrows. I mean, how many of you already know how to draw eyebrows? I mean, how unlikely is it that God would supply that need in a really interesting way? But God seemed to care that these unimportant things were important to me. It was as if He was saying, I know that I'm not fixing the big thing, but I want you to know daily that I love and care for you. So I'm taking care of the smallest things to remind you daily of my love. One of my support group friends went with me to shop for a wig. Another friend, a fellow Southerner that had been transplanted to Minnesota, brought me lots of homemade Southern food. Things like chicken and dumplings and sweet potato biscuits. And I could eat her food when I couldn't eat anything else. If I'd met her sooner, I probably would have never lost that 20 pounds. And just last week, I learned that my recent CT scan, after giving us a bit of a scare, is clear of cancer. Yeah. We don't have time for me to go over this list, but this is the list. It's 5 pages long of all these blessings. And you just look at this. It's amazing. Each one has its own story. I was terribly sick, very, very sick. And I didn't know if I would survive cancer. But I can tell you this, I never felt so loved by God.